They sold my house while I was recovering from surgery, my own children. And 2 days later, they saw my face on the evening news. Let me back up. My name is Eugene Hartley. I'm 67 years old. I spent 38 years running a small but steady hardware store in Dayton, Ohio. Hartley's Hardware, right on Salem Avenue. Nothing fancy. We sold paint and pipe fittings and lawn seed. We knew our customers by name. When a guy came in after a bad storm, we'd let him run a tab. That was the kind of place it was. My wife, Carol, died 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 11 weeks from diagnosis to the day I buried her in Woodland Cemetery. 11 weeks. I still can't say her name without feeling something shift behind my sternum. After she passed, the store kept me alive, literally. I'd open at 7, count the register, talk to the delivery guys, help old Mr. Pembroke find the right caulking for his bathtub. Small things. But they were mine. I have 2 children. My son Dennis is 41. He works in real estate, commercial properties, the kind of deals where nobody shakes hands anymore. Everything goes through lawyers. My daughter Patricia is 38. She married a man named Scott who always had the look of someone calculating something in his head while you were talking to him. I never trusted that look. I told myself I was wrong about him. I was not wrong about him. I was not wrong about him. About 2 years ago, Dennis started coming around more. I noticed it. After Carol died, I'd go months without seeing him. A phone call on my birthday, maybe Christmas if I was lucky. Then suddenly he was stopping by on Sundays, bringing coffee, asking how I was feeling. I was glad. I told myself, he's growing up. He finally understands that time runs out. He'd bring up the store sometimes. Dad, you're not getting any younger. Have you thought about selling? You'd clear maybe 400,000 in this market. Easy. That's real money. You could travel, relax, move somewhere warmer. I'd change the subject. The store wasn't just a building. It was 38 years of my life. It was the place Carol used to bring me lunch on Saturdays. Then Patricia started calling more. Same theme, different voice. Dad, we just want you to be comfortable. You've worked so hard. Don't you want to enjoy what you built? And Scott. Scott would sometimes get on the phone and talk about estate planning and asset liquidity and other words that made my eyes glaze over. I should have seen it. I was a businessman for 4 decades. I knew when someone was selling me something, but these were my children. In January of last year, I had a hip replaced. Not an emergency. It had been grinding badly for 2 years. The surgeon said I'd waited too long already. The surgery itself went fine, but the recovery was harder than I expected. I was in the rehabilitation center for 3 weeks. Fair Oaks Rehab, over on Shiloh Springs Road. Nice enough place. Physical therapy twice a day. Meals at a table with 4 other men, who all had the same bewildered expression, like we'd each woken up in someone else's body. Dennis visited 4 times in those 3 weeks. Patricia came twice. Scott came once with a folder. He said it was just some paperwork. Power of attorney, he explained, for while I was incapacitated. Just so we can handle things if something comes up, Dad. So bills get paid, nothing falls through the cracks. I was 3 days out of surgery, on pain medication that made the ceiling look like it was breathing. He had a pen ready. I signed. I have asked myself every day since then how I could have been so foolish. I was 66 years old. I built a business from nothing, and I signed a document I didn't fully read while I was on hydrocodone, because the man sitting across from me was my daughter's husband, and I wanted to believe that family means something. It means something, all right. Just not always what you hope. When I got back home in February, things felt off immediately. Dennis called the day after I arrived and asked if I was settled in. The phrase struck me as odd, like he was checking a box. A week later, I got a letter from a title company in Columbus. It was a notification, routine, they said, about a change in the deed to my property. My house on Spinning Road. The house Carol and I bought in 1991. The house where my kids grew up, where Dennis broke his arm falling out of the oak tree in the backyard, where Patricia had her prom photos taken on the front porch. It had been transferred into an LLC. An LLC I had never heard of. I called Dennis. He didn't answer. I called Patricia. She picked up on the fourth ring, and her voice had a careful, rehearsed quality I'd never heard before. She said I must be confused. She said the medication sometimes causes that. She said she'd look into it. She never called back. I drove to the county recorder's office myself, hip still aching, and sat down with a clerk named Beverly, who was patient enough to walk me through the documents. The power of attorney Scott had me sign was broader than I understood. It covered real property. My signature, wobbly, slanted, nothing like my normal handwriting, was on the deed transfer. The LLC had been formed 3 weeks before my surgery. Dennis was listed as the registered agent. Beverly looked at me for a moment when I stood up to leave. I don't know what my face was doing, but she said quietly, "Sir, you should talk to an attorney." I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time. It was February in Dayton. The sky was that flat white color it gets in winter, like the world has run out of ideas. I thought about Carol. I thought about the 38 years on Salem Avenue. I thought about the way Patricia laughed when she was little, this big honking laugh that surprised you every time, because she was such a small kid. I thought, how does a person do this? I called my friend Howard that night, Howard Briggs. We've been friends since 1987, met at a Rotary luncheon. Neither of us wanted to be there. He listened to the whole story without interrupting, which is how I knew he understood it was serious. Howard never stops interrupting. He said, "Gene, you need Ed Callahan." Ed Callahan is an attorney in Kettering who handles elder law and estate disputes. I'd met him once at Howard's retirement party. He had the kind of face you trust, not because it was warm, but because it was honest. You could tell he'd delivered bad news before and hadn't flinched. I was in his office the next morning. Ed looked at the documents for a long time. He asked me questions. He asked about the medication I was on when I signed. He asked about the timeline of the LLC formation. He asked whether I'd been diagnosed with any cognitive decline. I told him I had not. He nodded, made notes, and then he leaned back in his chair and said, "Eugene, what they did is called undue influence, possibly fraud. The power of attorney was almost certainly obtained improperly. We can challenge this." He paused. Then he said, "But I want to be straightforward with you. It'll take time, it will cost money, and it will mean suing your children." I stared out his window at the parking lot. A woman was loading groceries into a minivan. Normal Tuesday morning. Nothing dramatic, just the world going on. "Let's start," I said. Ed filed the complaint in March. The lawsuit named Dennis, Patricia, and Scott individually, and challenged both the power of attorney and the deed transfer. Ed also contacted the Ohio Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, because the LLC had been formed with what appeared to be falsified documentation. Dennis called me screaming the day he was served. I let him go for about 90 seconds, and then I said, "Dennis, I'm going to hang up now," and I did. Patricia texted me 14 times over 2 days. The messages started apologetic and escalated to accusatory. The last one said, "You're destroying this family." I read it twice. Then I put the phone down and went and watered my tomato plants. Here's what I want to say about those months. March through July, they were the loneliest of my life. And that includes the months after Carol died. Because when Carol died, people showed up. Neighbors, church friends, the guys from the store. Grief is visible. People know what to do with it. But this particular kind of wound, I didn't know how to explain it to anyone. How do you tell someone that your children tried to steal your house? People look at you differently after that. Some don't believe you. Some believe you and don't know what to say. Some start talking about their own families, and then you're both just sitting there in the dark. Howard came over every Wednesday. We'd watch baseball and not talk about it. That helped more than anything anyone actually said. I was also dealing with the store during all this. I'd gone back in March after the hip healed enough. My manager, a steady young man named Carl, had kept things running. The regulars asked where I'd been. I said I had a surgery. They nodded and moved on. People are decent, mostly. In June, a reporter from the Dayton Daily News named Joanna Ferris came into the store. She was working on a piece about elder financial abuse in Ohio. Apparently it had spiked in the years after the pandemic. Adult children taking advantage of aging parents, power of attorney fraud, the whole ugly pattern. Someone at the county recorder's office had flagged a cluster of cases and she was looking for someone willing to talk. Carl sent her over to me. I almost said no. I'm a private person. I don't like attention. I spent 38 years behind a counter. I was always the one helping other people, not the one being helped. But I thought about Beverly at the recorder's office. Her quiet voice, "You should talk to an attorney." I thought about how many people had maybe gotten that same letter and didn't drive to the recorder's office. Didn't have a Howard. Didn't know an Ed Callahan. I said yes. Joanna spent 2 afternoons with me. She was thorough, careful, and kind in a way that wasn't soft. More like a person who has seen a lot and decided to stay decent anyway. She read all the documents. She talked to Ed with my permission. She asked about Carol. I hadn't expected that, and I had to stop for a minute when she did. The piece ran on a Saturday in July. Front page of the local section. The headline was, "Dayton man says his children stole his home while he recovered from surgery." There was a photo of me standing in front of the store. I look older than I feel, but maybe that's always true. I didn't know it was running that day. Howard called me at 7 in the morning. "Gene," he said, "you're in the paper." He sounded like he was trying not to cry, which meant he definitely was. By noon, the story had been picked up by the AP wire. By evening, it was on the local TV news, all 3 stations. Then WKRC in Cincinnati. Then a producer from a national morning show called Ed's Office. I sat in my kitchen that night with a cup of coffee going cold in front of me, watching my name scroll across the bottom of the TV screen, and I thought, this is not what I wanted. This is not who I wanted to be. I wanted to run my store and grow my tomatoes and visit Carol's grave on Sundays and live out the rest of my years in some reasonable peace. But then I thought about the other people, the ones who got that letter and had no one to call. Dennis saw the story. I know because his attorney contacted Ed that Monday morning. Suddenly they were interested in talking. Patricia left a voicemail. Her voice was different, not careful and rehearsed anymore. It sounded like her, actually, like the person she used to be. Or maybe the person she still was underneath, whatever had happened to her. She said she was sorry. She said Scott had pushed her. She said she didn't realize how far it had gone until it was already done. She cried. I listened to that voicemail 4 times. I didn't call back. Not yet. The settlement was reached in September. Ed was efficient and thorough, and I will send him a Christmas card every year until one of us dies. The deed to my house was restored to my name. The LLC was dissolved. Dennis and Scott. It was mostly Scott. The investigation eventually made clear Dennis had been weak and greedy, but Scott had been the architect, faced civil liability and, after the Attorney General's office finished their review, a referral to the county prosecutor. I don't know yet what comes of that. Ed says it takes time. I also changed my will. That's all I'll say about that. In October, I got a letter, an actual letter handwritten on notebook paper, from a woman in Springfield named Dolores. She said she'd read my story in July, and it had given her the courage to call an attorney about her own situation. Something similar. A son and a reverse mortgage. She hadn't fully understood. She said she'd gotten her money back. She signed it. Thank you, Mr. Hartley. You reminded me I still had a fight left in me. I read that letter at the kitchen table, and then I walked out to the backyard and stood next to Carol's rose bushes, the ones she planted the year we moved in, the ones I've kept alive through 30 Ohio winters because I didn't know what else to do with the love. I thought, okay. I still open the store at 7. I still mow the regulars by name. My hip aches when it rains, and it rains a lot in Ohio, so I've made a kind of peace with that. Howard comes over on Wednesdays. Patricia and I have spoken twice since the settlement. Short calls. Careful. She's in therapy now, she told me. I don't know what that means for us yet. Maybe nothing. Maybe something. I've stopped pretending I know how families work. Dennis, I haven't spoken to. I don't know if I will. What I know is this. I'm still in my house. The house on Spinning Road where Carol and I raised 2 children. where I sat at this same kitchen table through 40 Ohio winters, where the rose bushes still come back every May, regardless of what the rest of the world is doing. Some things, once you fight for them, feel more like yours than they did before. I don't know if that's a good thing or a sad thing. Maybe it's both. My name is Eugene Hartley. I'm 67 years old, and I'm still here. I've thought a lot about what made this possible. Not just the legal part. Ed handled that. I mean the part that happened years before any document got signed. The part that was my fault. I raised Dennis and Patricia to expect things would be taken care of. I don't mean I spoiled them exactly. I mean I never let them see me struggle. When the store had a bad quarter, I didn't say so. When Carol got sick, I handled it. I was the kind of father who fixed problems before his children knew there were problems to fix. I thought that was love. Maybe part of it was, but part of it was also pride. And part of it, the part I've had to sit with, was that I never made them practice being decent. I just assumed they would be. Decency isn't inherited. That's the thing nobody tells you when you're raising kids. You have to teach it like you teach anything else, with patience and repetition and consequence. I taught my children that everything works out. I did not teach them what to do when it doesn't. So when Scott came along with his calculations and his folders and his talent for turning greed into paperwork, Dennis and Patricia didn't have anything strong enough inside them to push back. That's on me, partly. I've made my peace with that. Mostly. What I haven't made peace with, and don't intend to, is the idea that any of it was inevitable. Scott knew what he was doing. Dennis chose to go along with it. Patricia let it happen. Every one of those was a decision made by an adult who understood right from wrong and chose wrong anyway. The cause was greed. The effect was a 70-year-old man sitting in a parking lot in February, staring at a piece of paper that said his home no longer belonged to him. Causes have effects. That's not philosophy. That's just how it works. And the effects of their choices are still unfolding, in a court record, in a civil judgment, in a referral to the county prosecutor. They planted something ugly and it grew. But here's the part I keep coming back to. The woman in Springfield, Dolores, who wrote me that letter on notebook paper, she said I reminded her she still had a fight left in her. I didn't do anything heroic. I drove to the recorder's office because I didn't know what else to do. I said yes to a reporter because I thought about the people who got that same letter and had nobody to call. That's not courage in a dramatic sense. It's just deciding that your situation is worth something beyond your own embarrassment about it. That's intelligence, I think. The real kind. Not clever, not strategic. Just honest enough to look at what's happening and name it clearly. I'm 67. My hip aches in the rain. I open the store at 7 and I close it at 5. And I go home to the house on Spinning Road. Carol's rose bushes came back this May, same as every year. I stood out there in the yard the morning they bloomed and I thought, this is what you fight for. Not to win, not to get back at anyone, just to still be standing in your own backyard in the spring, with your name on the deed and your hands in the dirt and enough life left to be grateful for it. That's enough. That's more than enough.